Hey fellas, PV2 Smurf here. PV2 Smurf here. PV2 Smurf here. Oh fellas, PV2 Smurf here. Fellas, I've already taken this off, but I just want to do a quick video. I didn't feel there were really any good references online. It kind of give you some symptoms and things and odd and end things. So I want to make sure that you have some kind of grasp on the concept to be able to diagnose this and repair this yourself and save you some money, because that's important. Gas being expensive, yada yada, it's important. So I had to go and have the rear tire replaced. Yeah, you can replace it yourself. No, I'm not going to. The owner of the bike gave me the tire and said, hey man, can you just go ahead and replace my tire while you're at it? I was like, sure, that's no problem. Give me the new tire and everything. Just hadn't had time to get to it, he said. So I took the initiative, went ahead and did that. After I got the motorcycle off the ground, and it's off the ground, I went to go remove the rear tire, and here's what I found. See the wobbling? See how it moves? Oh boy. It shouldn't. So we're going to remove this back off. I'm going to show you how to replace the wheel bearings, hub bearings. I'm going to call it rear wheel bearings. There's a nut and a washer on this specific one. And all I did, fellas, good practice for all you all. It's like I've told you before, I took it off in this order. This is the order I'm going to make sure it goes back on. Starting, if you go from the chain driven side to the other side, nut, washer, and then a spacer. Spacer, if you can see right there, has a mark on it. To my knowledge, I haven't measured these yet. These are the same size, so it really won't matter which side they went on. But I can tell you that they're wore pretty good, which also tells me that the bearing has been bad for some time. Here's a close-up. See the wire marks? They're on that bearing. Tells me that bearing's probably been rode for a while and been going bad. But you can see the wear marks. See that? It's wore down in it. But we're going to clean all this up. I'll also put an exploded view on here that you can see. After you remove that, we have to slide this forward. Remove the chain. Take the axle. Might have to tap it to get it to start moving. Like I said, I've already removed this. Tap it, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it through from the other side. The axle. Slide this out of the brake right here. And the tire's mine. Now that we have our tire off, it's a good idea to go ahead and inspect this. These do have a minimum maximum diameter. Another thing that you need to inspect, other than the diameter, because we're already replacing the bearings, you also want to inspect the cog. On these cogs right here, on all of them, not just this one specifically, the shape of the teeth pattern will determine if you need to replace this. It also, all cogs will have a number. This one, I think, has been changed. It says 45 right here. I don't know if you can see it or not. But you want to check these cog teeth and make sure you don't have any chip, crack, missing, anything like that. And you also want to see their shape. The shape should look like this and should not look like this. Another thing you want to check while you got this tire off is all your spokes are relatively tight. As far as truing a spoke up, that's something I've never had to do. There's probably plenty of good references to find to be able to do that. But for our purposes, we don't have to, so it's fine by me. If any part of this tire needs to be replaced, do it now. I mean, if you're on a budget and you have to make do, I understand. Trust me, I've been there multiple times. But if you got the time, you don't want to be stuck out on the trail, broke down because the cog tooth chipped and you fell over and you hurt your leg or yourself. Now you can't get your bike home. Then you can't get home. And then it's just a headache. If this thing looks rough, invest some money in this thing. You got to remember, when you're out on the trail, it's just this thing. And it can be something as small as a bad cog with a couple missing teeth, or it's cracked, or anything that could be causing issues for you, that won't get you home, and that's important. Goes without saying. Same thing with this rotor right here. If that rotor or anything's bad, just go ahead and replace that. Don't be one of them tight asses. Just change it. Now I'm going to show you how to remove these bearings on the inside of this, located right there. One thing I want to make sure I show you is the proper way of supporting this tire, because if you don't support this tire correctly, you could cause even more damage than what you already got. Rule 1, do not lay the tire flat like this on the cog or the brake rotor and beat these bearings out. 1, they're not going to come out because it's flush with the floor. 2, you will warp or damage that, and that will cause complications and issues later. So just don't do it. Don't even think about it. Just don't do it. This is another dandy example I've seen online that you shouldn't do. Yeah, the bearings will come out and be caught in that bucket. What else is going to happen? Oh, you're going to bend your spoke, or spokes in this case, depending on how bad the bearings are seized in there. Then guess what? You're going to have to buy a tire. You want to see the price of a tire? I'm assuming you don't, so don't do that either. Now, the correct way to position or mount this tire, so therefore you can get the bearings out, is as followed. I'm going to support the tire on the edges here, not on anything in here, just the outside of the tire. It'll take the abuse. You're not beating it that bad. In my case, the 2 old pieces of 4x4, use center blocks per se. Wood I feel is a little better, so if it bounces around, it won't scuff the rim. The wood won't. If you use center blocks, anything on the outside, and you want to do it this way. You want to lay it down, lay the other one down, lay it forward. This thing is off the ground, plenty enough for the bearings to clear on the bottom, which will allow us to hammer and beat on this to get these bearings out, depending on how bad they're seized. You can use a screwdriver. I'm going to use a lady slipper, they call it. And all I'm going to do is as followed. Other things I've done. The bearings are 2 different sizes, so 2 different size sockets. Now the diameter of these are both axle sockets. As you can see, the diameter is different. These bearings are different in diameter. So one thing to remember when you go to do this, you want to make sure that you push the right way, because you don't want to force it through the other side or on the other one. Move the seal on this side. See the wire on the inside? So this one definitely is probably not sealing correctly. So make sure you place it. You can see the mud and dirt. On the bottom right there, I'll mark it out for you to get a punch down in there to knock that loose. Now you may be asking yourself, how are you going to clean the inside of that up? Well, probably take hose water and get it. There's grease in there, probably not going to get clean. The biggest area of concern to me is just where the bearing's going to ride out. So a couple of these from a cordless drill. I fit right back in here, and there's a gap around it. And I'm just going to clean that surface up, being sure not to be too aggressive with it. If you ain't got one of these cleaned out, probably use sandpaper or anything else. That's what I got, and this is the method I'm using. Very, very light pressure. Seen it before. Right there's the after. I repeat on the other side. So now what I'm going to do is clean up the spacer that goes in there. You may not, I'm going to. So it goes from looking like this to looking like this. I nicked it on this end right here. So all I done was took and made it smooth because it had a bump in it. I don't want to scar the inside. Also, in case you don't want the kit and you just need specific bearing, the bearing on the small one, the one on the left, number on it is 6004, R as in Romeo, S as in Sierra. The bigger one, the numbers on it, in case you can see them, you can see them a little better, the camera, is 6204, Romeo Sierra. And the seals, this is being a smaller one, and here's the smaller one. D247, see it? This one is D772. So if you need to replace them, you can't find the kit, there's the seal part numbers. Get that bugger. Definitely gonna need these. Now if you've ever owned a Razor side by side, you've had to replace the wheel bearings and you know they go out pretty frequently. I've always done this specific procedure to all bearings that are sealed, unless it's inside a case or something that, you know, it's in its own liquid or fluid or whatever. What I always do is I get me some regular grease and have my grease gun here. And all this is high temp wheel bearing grease. Make sure I get the correct bearing. As you can see, that's the bigger one for the brake side, so I have the correct one. The little one, as you can see, goes in there. What I have always done is I'm going to put a little bit of grease right here around this surface. Not on the outside, right here. I'll set it in there. Till I get it tapped in there, then I'm going to put a little bit on this surface. Put me a little bit in the middle. Note I didn't say a heaping portion, just a little bit. You'll fit around the outside race of this. Do not hammer the inside. I assume if you're watching this, you already know that. I'm just going to go around it. You can tell by the sound it's seated. Then if you can hear the difference. If you can't, you can feel the difference. Verify by kind of slipping the seal there. It's good to me. Same thing, a little grease on the outside right here. Now you can use a copious amount on this side if you'd like. Reason being is because that seal's going to sit in there. You want to make sure you got grease on it. Said it before, you don't put it in dry. Here's the new seal. Go around the inside of it. Just kind of lube it up a little bit. Just a tad bit. So that way it'll flex and it won't rip. Install the axle shaft. Light taps. You just need it flush. You don't have to drive it all the way in. You can feel it flush on this side, but not this side. Take it back on here. Little tap. That's it. Everything's good inside there. We're going to slide the tire in. On this specific one, the axle actually slides brake side over. Now before you go reinstalling your tire, remember we have a spacer like this one that goes inside of this before it slides on. This is the brake side, be the right side of the bike. Put a little grease around the outside of it. We're going to slide it in there. But you want to do that before you slide it inside the brakes. Whatever you do, don't pick your hammer up and start beating on this. Bam, bam. Just goes in there and sits. Does not get hammered in place. So don't beat it in place. Now we got to align everything. Once we get the brakes aligned, everything slides into place. The next thing you're going to want to do before you slide the axle in is loosen this bolt here so we can adjust it. It may not need adjustment. I think on this one it does. On yours it may not, but it won't hurt. Go ahead and knock this jam nut right here loose before you put the bike together. Otherwise you won't be able to adjust this because of the jam nut. As you can see, all I done was got in here and broke this loose. So that way it's easily adjusted. The axle is started through. Take notice the spacer is in that side, as well as the brake pads on the outside of the rotor. The other side the same. As you can see, I do have the spacer on there. Don't forget that. On this side, there's a square spacer on it, has one mark on it. We can clean it off so that way we can see it to align it. Now don't fret that we didn't do the chain on here yet. The reason why we loosen this, we're going to scoop this up and align this chain. Now look, it's not even torqued, and look. No movement at all. No wobble, nothing. That's what we want. Just like that. You hear it slapping the guide up here. That's because it's too loose. Now the last thing we're going to do before we get this project buttoned up is check the free plate in the chain. All I done was took a crescent wrench and just tighten that up just enough so it'll keep the axle from moving too much. Now what I'm going to do is check our free play. Free play right here on this one, the sticker's still on here, but it will be in the reference manual, is 25 millimeters or 1 inch. Now this chain has probably been on here since factory, so it's probably pretty loose, but we're going to check it anyway. Free play is between here and here, and so if I hold this tape line over here, clearly a little over 1 inch. So what we're going to do is take our adjustment nuts down here and we're going to adjust them out to push the axle back. So I'm going to do is take the end of this right here and I'm going to loosen it, and that will push the thread and bring the axle back. Chain's adjusted as it should be with 1 inch of play. The last thing you want to measure to make sure is this mark that's on here. You want to make sure that that mark that's on this line right here is the same on both sides. That will tell you that this tire is positioned straight line. The right amount of slack in both sides, it's where it's supposed to be. I've seen mixed reviews, and once this gets torqued to, it does get torqued. If you don't have a way to torque yours, just don't over tighten it, I suppose. Put too much of a preload. Online for this one specifically, it said 65, another source said 68, so I'm going to split the difference and go 66 and a half, roughly. Now I'm going to check to make sure that nothing is dragging or too tight or any of that. Right now, you want to do it now before you get out on the road in it. Then we're going to check the air pressure in the tires. Go for a ride. As always, guys, remember, your rig, your call.